He is the former head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, former head coach at Murray State and NC State as well, national championship assistant coach at UCLA, and, of course, a former Alabama player. Mark Gottfried is with us here on the program this morning. Good morning, Coach. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How you doing?
Man, good to hear from you. Good to have you on the program. Seems like old times, man. I got to tell you. Hey, first of all, just kind of catch us up on what you're doing right now and maybe what you got planned for the future.
Well, I'm working for the Dallas Mavericks, and the president and general manager there, Donnie Nelson. I've known him for a lot of years, and he invited me to come out and kind of learn from him and shadow him a little bit. I've done a lot of scouting, watched a lot of games. I've been involved with those guys kind of on a front office side. So it's been a little interesting, a little different for me, but something that so far it's been pretty enjoyable. So
the NBA is something you might want to pursue a career in, I assume, then, based on this career decision?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for me to learn a little bit about this league and, just kind of get familiar with maybe something a little bit different than I've ever done before. I've always coached,
right,
and this is something a little bit different. So it is kind of exciting to learn and, to take on a new challenge a little bit. I think, coaching is still a part of kind of all of us that have done it so long, but I am having fun with it, and it's been good to maybe just try to do something a little different here in life.
Yeah, and you mentioned Donnie Nelson. Of course, he's accomplished in his own right, but his father, Don, one of the great NBA coaches of all time, and just like you, I guess, coaching families, it just seems like you get that coaching in your blood, or you get a sport in your blood, and you can't shake it. And I know, as you said, that's a great opportunity for you to work with him.
Well, he's been amazing, and their whole organization. The one thing that it's been great is as I've gone around, watch college games or different NBA games, and everybody comments on the Maverick organization, how strong it is, how good it is. Donnie's been there a long time. Mark Cuban's been wonderful. He's very hands-on. He's involved. So that's kind of fun too, to be involved with a really good organization. That's been I've enjoyed that a lot.
As you said, coaching has been your entire career, man. And so from your playing days, you went right into coaching and had great success at all three of your stops. I was looking back this morning thinking about this interview with you, and I thought one thing maybe you've done wrong is you've won too much too soon everywhere you've gone. You got to Murray and you won there. And of course, that led to Alabama, and Alabama was really struggling when you got here. You won 25 games in 2001. 27 in 2002, SEC regular season championship, second seed in the NCAA tournament, 5 straight NCAA tournaments. Then you get to NC State, and right off the bat there, you're going to the NCAA Sweet 16s and winning 23, 24 games. You get the bar raised so high right off the bat, you set the expectation level too high. You need to go in and not win as many games early and not get everybody spoiled, right?
Start off slow. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how things work out, and I've enjoyed every stop I've had, and unfortunately, you're probably right. Even at NC State, those first, if the last two were the first two,
right,
and the first 4 were the last 4, it would probably be different. But I've had a blast everywhere I've been, and great stops along the way. The time I had at Alabama was phenomenal. And, 11 years is a long time, for basketball.
It sure is.
And we had a lot of fun, did a lot of great things, and going to the Elite Eight, win the SEC championship outright. I think, too, Gary, people forget sometimes, like with Alabama basketball. I looked it up one time. Jim Farmer and we talk all the time, and I know most everybody remembers Jim. But I think if I'm right on this, since 1970, I got to go back with C.M. Newton. I want to say it was 76 or 74. I think Alabama's only won 3 SEC championships. I think in 87 when I played for Coach Sanderson.
That's right.
In 2002 would have been one, and then I think it's back to like 76. So that's a hard job, and it's one that it's hard to do because it hadn't been done very much. And but again, that was such a great. I had just a great experience there. Everything about it was wonderful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Coach Newton won 3 in a row in 74, 75, and 76. and then Coach Sanderson won his one regular season championship in '87, and then you won one in 2002, and that's it. And now you look back at those 5 straight NCAA tournament bursts that you had at Alabama, and there's only been one since. And that's where I want to go with this, because I think that there was a lot of winning going on in the 70s and 80s, and then when you got back, there was a lot of winning. But it is a tough job, and we're seeing that now. I mean, it's been a struggle for Alabama to get back into the NCAA tournament. Coach Grant, the one appearance, and they went out in the first round, and now Coach Avery Johnson trying to get them back there. I know you don't have time to follow Alabama very much with your NBA responsibilities, but how difficult is it at a school where football is always going to be number one in a deep conference like this? Good high school basketball in Alabama, but not great. How difficult is it to get this program to where it's going to NCAA tournaments every year?
Well, here's the thing, Gary. I think every job is hard for different reasons. And, even the Kentucky job is hard. It's just different reasons it's hard. Their expectations are different there. But what makes the job with Alabama basketball hard is that football is so dominant. It's not a bad thing. But, if you look around the country and you say, who would be similar to that? Maybe Oklahoma, maybe Nebraska, Penn State, where football, USC, Southern Cal, and the basketball is just difficult at times because there's so much attention 12 months a year, given to football. I can remember times when I was there where we had really, really good teams early. But, football season, the bowl didn't end until, January. And then people began to really pay attention. And at that time, you're 15, 16 games into your season, almost halfway through at times, or starting the league. And that makes it hard. It's not impossible. It's just part of it. The other thing I think with Alabama is, there's some schools that I believe you can recruit nationally. You can go into anywhere in America and pull really, really good players. And I think Alabama and Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Georgia and LSU, they're kind of a regional recruiting jobs where, like when I was there, we tried to dominate our state and get the best players in the state of Alabama. And Wimp did that. Wimp was probably, he set the blueprint for that. As far as, the Irwin Dudleys and Rod Grizzards and Terrence Meads and Kennedy Winstons and, Richard Hendricks and Ron Steele, and we're going to get the best in our state. And then every now and then you go get, some good players from maybe Mississippi or Atlanta or wherever. But it's hard at Alabama to go to California or New York or, Baltimore, where there are other jobs you can do that. So just makes it a harder place. Doesn't mean it's impossible, Gary, but it does make the challenges of that particular job a little bit difficult.
When you look back at your tenure and, having a team that's good enough to go to the Final Four and making it to the Final Four, aren't necessarily the same thing. I mean, you have teams, Alabama's had teams, the 76 team, that 87 team that you were on, probably the 1982 team that Coach Sanderson had, maybe 1990. Those teams were good enough. They just didn't make it. And you had a couple teams. I thought that 2002 team, even though you went out in the second round, probably, matchups are important in the tournament. I know that, was good enough to get there. Obviously 2004, you got within one game of making it, and you had a couple other teams that were really good. I know that was your goal when you came to Alabama. How is any regrets, or how disappointing was it that you weren't able to deliver a Final Four to a school that's never had one?
That's the thing. Here's the thing for me, Gary. I grew up, my dad was a small college basketball coach. We took family vacations every year. My sister and I, it was the two of us, 2 kids. We would go to Final Fours. How about that one? That's our family vacation. I was in Salt Lake City in 1979, and I watched Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. And I was there in 1980 in Philadelphia. Ronald Reagan got shot on that Saturday afternoon of the Final Four. So anyway, I grew up around it. So my dream and goal has always been to coach a team and take them to the Final Four, to play in one as a player. And that year, we go to Arizona and. We got to play UConn. We beat Syracuse in the Sweet 16, defending national champs, and now you got to play UConn. Well, UConn that year blew through the tournament.
Yep.
If you go back and look at the margin of wins they had, we just ended up playing against the best team, who, by the way, was the best team by far.
Right.
It wasn't. They had one game, I think, in their 6 NCAA tournament games that was relatively close, and all the rest of them were just, they were too good. And that happened. and it's disappointing. And so, yeah, I wish we would have taken Alabama to a Final Four. We were 40 minutes away. I can remember sitting there before the game, in the locker room, and I love that team too. Petway was amazing, and Ernest, and all those guys. What a great group of guys. But I can remember saying to myself, "We're 40 minutes away. We're 40 minutes away from the Final Four at Alabama." And you lose the game, and then you've got to go to the Final Four. I went the next weekend,
right?
And you're sitting in the crowd, looking down on the bench, thinking, we're 40 minutes away from being right there.
Yeah.
And so you go back and you look at some of those. That team in 2002, Gary, we had a great team, and Kent State beat us. And I know there are a lot of people that go, how did Kent State beat you? And I remember they had beaten Oklahoma State, who were the Big 12 champs.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Pittsburgh, who was the Big East champ, and they beat us, who were the SEC champs. And they're in the Elite Eight, and that was the year Indiana. They had Indiana beat, and who were the Big Ten champs. And then that was the year Mike Davis, his team, rolled on there and beat them in Lexington right at the very end of the game. So that was a really good team that beat us, but that's just part of it. Wish it would have happened. I wish, my goal was to take Alabama to a Final Four. We were close, just didn't get over the hump.
Yeah, I remember Kent State had Antonio Gates, who's gone on a great NFL career, but he was a load down on that. He had that big trunk.
He wasn't bad, was he?
Yeah, he could carve out some space. You talk about teams that potentially were good enough. I remember after the 2004 run, of course, everybody was always obviously hyped up. Your 2005 team was a really good team. Kennedy Winston, I remember you ran into Bruce Pearl in Milwaukee in that first round, and dangerous team.
That's right.
You get out of the first round, who knows how far you go.
Well, every team
basketball.
at that point is good. Every team is good. They've earned the right to be at that point, and that was a tough one too for us. But getting to the tournament, and and we always played a hard schedule, a great non-conference schedule. Probably helped us get in the tournament 2 or 3 of those years, where you come down to being on the bubble, and the fact that you're willing to go play good, even good mid-major teams, finding teams that are going to have good records, and then be willing to go play different places on the road. I remember we were number 1 in the country, ranked number 1 in the country, and had to go play at Utah.
Yep.
And hard place to play, at Utah in Salt Lake City. Rick Majerus was the coach, and we actually had a shot to win the game. Mo had a great shot, just missed it, and it was a hard place to play. But you got to be willing to go play games like that, and we were always able to do that. That probably helped us a couple years get into the tournament.
Yeah, I think and that's coaching for you. Like you said, 11 years is a long time at one place these days. But looking where Alabama's trying to get back to now, and you look at your resume, 5 straight NCAAs, number 1 ranking in the country, Elite 8. Those were good times. And the 2001 team just got absolutely jobbed. That team should have been in the NCAA tournament. Wound up going to the NIT and finishing as the runner-up, so it should have been 6 straight. I got to ask you this question, since you've been in both leagues, played in the SEC, of course you coach in the Pac-12 as well, but recently in the ACC, we think of the ACC as a basketball league, we think of the SEC as a football league, but the SEC's got good basketball, and the ACC obviously has got good football. I got to ask you the dreaded compare question, the difference in the two leagues basketball-wise. I know this is a really good year for the SEC in terms of depth, but you've been in both. Is the SEC comparable to the ACC, top to bottom, as far as basketball, or is what people think about the two leagues true? Is the ACC?
I don't think there's Gary. I don't think there's any question that the SEC is basketball just as good as the ACC. Now, what you have here's what makes it a little bit different because of North Carolina and Duke. You've got 2 blue bloods there that have been good for a long, long time. Hall of Fame coaches. And before Rick Pitino left Louisville, we had 4 Hall of Fame coaches in that league, 4, which no league in America has that. But the thing that happens in the ACC, a little bit different than the SEC, is each school in that league really promotes basketball and makes a commitment probably to basketball in a different way than the SEC does. The SEC makes so much money, and Saturday afternoons and Saturday nights in the fall with football is so big. At most of the schools in the league, probably outside of maybe Kentucky and Vanderbilt, which they're not great in basketball, but you look at the emphasis put on football, and deservingly so. They bring in a lot of money, and the fan following and the interest and the media, and spring recruiting and spring football and there's so much attention to that in the SEC at most of the schools, where in the ACC, spring football, you don't know that they're even having it. You don't even know that there is spring football at Virginia or Duke or North Carolina or a lot of the schools in that league. So just the emphasis by, the school, the marketing, even the media, I think in that league, they just promote basketball in such a different way. That's probably the biggest thing. But as far as just lining teams up to go play, SEC is just as good. There's no doubt about that.
Finally, since you're with the Mavericks, and Avery Johnson had, of course, spent some time there as the head coach, and he's at Alabama now. Do you know Coach Johnson? I'm sure you probably do, but what do you think of his the job? I know you watch Alabama a ton, but the job he's done in getting this program and making them relevant again, and hopefully getting back into the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah, I think Avery. I've known Avery a long time. I used to go up to Seattle. How about this? When I was coaching at UCLA, and Avery was a teammate with Derek McKee.
That's right.
And that's when I first met Avery, way back in the late '80s. And I'm really excited for him. I know he had a tough one. I think it was last night.
Yeah.
But I think what happens at that job is, and I respect the fact Avery has learned, in my opinion, the right way to try to tackle that thing. He's done a great job recruiting in the state. Obviously Bruce is doing a good job over there at Auburn, but Avery's got good players. The difference today than it was for CM or for Wimp or for me or for Dave Hobbs, all of us. Guys leave so early now.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's a one and done. Robert Horry wouldn't stay 4 years anymore. Right. He wouldn't be there for 4, nor would Hollywood Robinson. So, with the guys he's got on his team this year, and it's just hard to build it sometimes. So he's going about it the right way. He's getting good players out of the state. He's a phenomenal person, great guy, and I'm rooting for him. I hope he can kind of turn that corner and get him over the hump and get in the tournament. Needs to finish strong probably this year. But, they've done a really good job there.
Final thing on that line of questioning about the one and dones, I would like to see you be able to go out of high school. If you're good enough and you want to go, I think they should open the doors for you to go straight to the NBA. But if you come to college, I think it ought to be like baseball. You have to stay 3 years, either as a redshirt sophomore or a third-year junior before you're allowed to go to the draft. I think it'd be better for the college game. I mean, you look at Kentucky, it's basically a different roster every year. You agree with that? I mean, I think it hurts the college game when guys and other people say, well, you get to see them at least for 1 year. But I just think it'd be better for the college basketball game if guys had to make a commitment for more than 1 year.
Gary, I think you're 100% right. If I was the commissioner for a day, that's what I would try to get done. Now, it's such a complicated thing. First of all, it's an NBA rule. It's not a college rule. Everybody, we forget that. This is an NBA rule. In college basketball, it's just we have to kind of line up and do the best we can with their rule is all we're doing. But I also believe you're right. I think there are kids, LeBron James didn't need to go to college.
Nope.
Kobe Bryant and those guys, Kevin Garnett. And there are guys now that are going for 1 year. I had a player last year, Dennis Smith, who plays for us with the Mavericks, who was, a really good player and had torn ACL. And, does he really need to go to college for 1 year? Did Ben Simmons need to go to LSU for 1 year? And I think the commissioner in the NBA, Adam Silver, would agree with you on that. The difficult thing, Gary, is then getting the next part of that, which is then you're eliminated from the draft for 3 more years. And that's where the Players Association and the NBA, there's a lot of pushback on that because, on one hand, they say, hey, this is America. You should be able to do whatever you want to do, go whenever you want to go. So, the owners have to get involved, the commissioner, difficult thing, but I agree with you. If you're good enough to go out of high school, go. And you know what? If you're not good enough and you make a mistake, well, that's on you. And but if you want to come to college, I think it'd be great for the college game if we had guys stay for longer periods of time. I actually think it would help the kids. It would push them closer to getting a degree. Going to college for 1 year, those guys never, ever, ever will get a college degree. They don't build up enough hours in 1 year, enough credits, for 1 year. If you're there 3, if you redshirt a year, like in football, stay 2 more, you're at least knocking on the door, and at some point may come back and finish that. But I would agree with you. I would see it the exact same way you do.
Great catching up with you, Coach. I tell you, when I'm on your Facebook page and I'm looking at those pictures with you and your kids, it looks like an Abercrombie and Fitch cover magazine. I mean,
they're a little bigger.
Are all
they're bigger than they were in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. Are all your kids professional models or what, man?
They've all grown up. I know that.
I appreciate it so much, Mark. Good catching up with you.
All right, Gary. Thanks.